Hey ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. So we're going to make yet another update to our MVC framework. So in this update, what we want to do is create a command line tool. So if you've used things like CodeIgniter or Laravel, you notice that they do have a command line tool. In Laravel, I think it's called Artisan, and in CodeIgniter it's called Spark. So we're going to create something similar to that. Now what the command line tool will help us do is create things like let's see here. So please download the code to this MVC framework here, because this is just an update. The links will be in the description to all the tutorials that are leading up to this point. So the first tutorial where we created it from scratch, and then the first update, the second update, and so on until this update here. This should be update number 3 if I'm not mistaken. And I think we will do one more update and then we'll call it a day and our MVC will be complete. But for now we're creating a command line 2 in here. Now what we're going to be using it for is, now I have loaded my folder, the MVC folder that you can see download in the description. I've loaded it in my text editor, which is Sublime Text, and this is the file structure I have. So normally what we do when we want to create a new page is we'll copy, let's say, the contents of the home controller, because we need a controller for each page. So we will copy this and rename the file and put this code there. Now instead of doing this, we can simply use our command line 2 and tell it to create a controller with a specific name for that controller. Also, when we are creating models, that's exactly what we do. We copy the user model here and we make edits to it. So instead of doing that, we're going to be using our command line 2, as you can imagine, to speed things up. Also, in the views, that's exactly what we do. We copy the home view or any other view maybe, and then we make a new view from there. So instead, we can use the command line tool for that. That way we can create several views, several controllers, several models with just a few commands in the command line. Right, so you can make the command line to do anything you want in here. This is to help speed up the development process. And because in the next update, we're going to do migrations and seeding, database seeding as well, we're going to have an extra folder here for migrations, for database migrations, and we will be using our tool, the command line tool, to make those as well. So with that background, let's begin to create our command line tool. Now the command line tool is very easy to create actually, so nothing difficult about it. It just sounds like a difficult thing to do, but it isn't. So what I'm going to do is go to the folder that contains my MVC here. As you can imagine, this is a command line tool, so we'll be running it in the command prompt. So I'm going to open this folder, and this is where my MVC is located. So it's inside C, XAMPP, htdocs, then MVC. So now we're going to add our tool directly in the main folder here. So the tool is not for use once you deploy your website, it becomes useless. It's for use in development. So I want to create something in here. Now the name of your tool is entirely up to you. So I want to keep it simple. Like I said, with CodeIgniter, it's called Spark. With what's this other one? Laravel, it's called Artisan. But for us, we're just going to make a new file and call it MVC. So I'm just going to save here, and I'll save it as mvc.php. Right? Then right here, I'm just going to say hello there, like so, just so we see if it actually works. So we have that in there. So I need to go back to the same folder because normally how you run this command line tool is by going to the folder that it exists in and then start running commands from there. So I'm going to select the folder here, and I will open my command line prompt. I will do cd to change the directory to where exactly my MVC framework is located. So press enter, and there we go. So now with this, I have I am in the directory right now. Now, if you have installed PHP properly on your system, you have installed XAMPP, which means you have PHP as well. You should be able to run a PHP file from the command line simply by typing PHP and then put the name of the PHP file that you are running. Now, you must do this in the folder where the PHP file exists. If you don't do it from that folder, you have to type in the full path to the file that you want to run. So in this case, this is why we moved to the folder that contains our MVC file, so that we can run it directly from there by just typing mvc.php, because that's what we named our file. So if I press enter, you see it says hello there. So that's a sign that it actually ran this file. But this is not really PHP, so we can convert this to PHP by putting PHP code and then doing echo like usual, like that. So we can check to see if we get the same result. And as you can see, it can echo just fine. So which means PHP is running properly in this file. All right, so now that we've done that, we can actually rename this this file by removing the .php at the end, so it's just MVC. The same way you see CodeIgniter has just the file name Spark. That way we are sorry, we avoid typing the .php when trying to run it. Normally when you are using CodeIgniter, you type something like PHP Spark like this, and then you put in your command. Or if you're using Laravel, you say artisan, and then you type in whatever command you want to perform. In our case, we're going to do PHP MVC. And you see, it still works without the .php, because it still assumes the file contains PHP. This is awesomeness. Now, a few things we have to take care of. So the first thing is I want it to echo what is known as the PHP SAPI name, like that. Now this one stands for Server API. So I just want to find out what API we're using right now, because you can run PHP in two API modes. The first one is the one that's called CGI, which is this one. We are running it through the browser and stuff. And then there's the CLI, which is the command line interface. This is the one we are running it right now. So if I run this file right now, I say PHP MVC, you see it tells me that I'm running this in my command line interface. So the answer is CLI, which is good. So I just need to know where I'm running this from. Now, as you can imagine, if I try to run our file directly from here by just typing MVC, it will run, right? But actually it won't run here because of the way we have set up our htaccess file. So what I'm going to do for a moment here is just rename the htaccess file so it's no longer active. I'll put an A at the end. I'll rename it later. I just want to be able to run that MVC file. Okay, URL request not found. Why is it not found inside MVC? Okay, let me rename this to .php. I just want to be able to run it in there. So I'm gonna do MVC dot. Oh, actually, that's not the reason. So let me undo that. That's fine. Let me rename it back to just MVC. The reason is it's not inside the public folder, so it's inside the other folder. So I didn't need to change any of this stuff. So let me rename the htaccess back to htaccess by removing that A. All I needed to do was change my directory to move out of there and do this. So MVC, MVC. So I wanted it to echo this, so I'm going to do var dump here like that, so that it shows me if it's echoing anything at all. Oh, I do need to make it .php so that it knows this is a PHP file. Sorry about that. So I rename it back to .php, and then I'll do mvc.php there, and there we go. So you see here it shows me what the current name of the server API is. I could also use a constant instead and use, it's like this, PHP server API, like so, and it gives me exactly the same result. So you see here the answer is Apache 2 handler, right? But when I'm running this same file in my command line interface, when I do mvc.php, you see it shows me CLI. Okay, so that's how you know whether you're running this in your command line or you're running it in the browser. That way you can stop it from running from there. So what I can do now is to tell it, let's put an if statement. I'm gonna say if this is equal to or is not equal to CLI. Let's use the other one which shows the name just to be sure, PHP SAPI name. If that name is not equal to command line like that, then we would tell the user that this is the wrong place to run this thing. So we're going to do die right there and tell the user this too is only for use in the command line. Command line like that. So you can put whatever message you want there. Okay. So otherwise, here we can echo and say running like that, so that we know when it's running and when it's not. So if I go to my command line here and redo the command, it will just show running, you see. But if I go to my browser and try to run it, it's going to say this too is only for use in the command line. So that's how you can avoid people running it from here. Okay, so that's one thing taken care of, which is great. Now that we have seen that, let's rename it back to remove the PHP. That way it's easy to use in the command line too, by just without having to type the .php. And then here I can go back to my home page. There we go. Okay, great. So we are off to a good start. At least it's running now. If we type PHP MVC, great. Now let's see how we can make it give us, how we can send commands to this same file, because if I do PHP MVC, MVC like that, I should be able to type something like, for example, make or create. I don't know which other word you want to use. You can say create, but I think I like using make instead. Something like make model, and then we give it a model name like users or something, or student. So if we want to make a model, we're going to type something like this, PHP MVC, and then make model, and then the name of the model, something. So I want it to be able to interpret this and say, okay, so the user wants to make a model, and the model name will be student. Okay, great. So how do we make that happen? Now, in order to make this happen, we need to be able to grab the contents of this over here. Okay. Conveniently, there's a tool, there's a variable in here that has those things. So I'm going to show you now. If I say print readable like that, and then say argv like that, okay. So as you can see, the moment I type argv, it looks different because this variable has a special meaning in PHP here. So let's see what it contains when we do that. So if I come back here and retype my command and press enter, you see that argv is an array that contains everything I typed here after PHP. So the first one is the file name itself. The second is the second. So everything after a space is separated into individual items like that. Okay, so how you do this part after the file name is entirely up to you. You can create your own system of how to do things. This is just my way of making it happen, where you type make and then you type the name of what you're making, and then if there are any extra parameters, you add them to the end there, like that. So we have this, we have make model, we have student. So at least this is one way we can create a router here. For example, when we say make model here, this is a section, okay, and this one is an extra param. So what we're going to do is create a simple routing system here. So what I'm gonna do now is we'll add more things later as we go. So as you have seen, we can completely ignore the first item in this array because this will always be the file name, which we have no use for, but the rest we do. So from 1 to 2, that is good stuff. But 1 here is like the determinant of where we go. So this is like the page number or something, the page, what page we're going to be on. So what I'll do is I'm just going to say, I'll call this one an action. So say action is equal to argv1, like that. Okay. Now, if there is nothing inside argv1, because it's very possible that somebody can just type PHP MVC and that's it. They don't type anything else, which means this one will be empty. Only this one will exist. So in that case, we should do something about it. So what I'm going to do is, if they don't type anything, so I'm going to put those 2 question marks to say, if this does not exist, let's assume they've typed the help keyword like that. So we're going to say action is equal to help like that if they don't type anything. Okay. And then what I will do now is use whatever this is to create, since this is OOP, we're going to create a class called MVC. Now, to give it a better name, maybe not MVC, maybe let's try, what name was I using? I think we can use something like Thunder or something. So let's change this to Thunder, for lack of a better term. You can use whatever you want here, not really a big deal. So instead of MVC, we'll be typing Thunder as the name of our command line tool. Then we're going to go to app here in the application and then create a new folder here. So this folder will be called Thunder because it will contain everything the Thunder system requires. Okay, so inside here, I want to create a class. So I'm going to right click and say new file in there, and I want to create a class. Now I want to follow the stuff that we've been creating here. Let me go to models and user model. So I'm going to give it a namespace and a class name like this. So I'm going to copy these guys over here and let's put that there. Now I need my PHP tags, of course. Make sure they're right at the beginning there, and let's save. This one will be called Thunder, capital T.php, save. So this one will be inside the namespace Thunder. That way it's very separate from everything else. Now here there is root path. Now we're not going to be using root path, so here I'm just going to say cpath. That will be the command line path or the current path there. And then here I'm going to call this one Thunder. or you can call it lightning, whatever, but lightning is harder to type, so that's why I'm going for this one instead. Okay, so we have a class there, very nice. Access denied will be sent if we don't have this cpath thingy as part of our thing. So what I'm going to do is go to the Thunder tool itself. I want it to import the Thunder class. So what I'm going to do is right about here, I want us to be able to use, I don't know how well the session runs here anyway, so we'll find out eventually. So I want to create a cpath over here. So I'm going to say define. Let's define here. I'm going to define cpath and define it as the current directory like this. I'm going to do dir like that. Okay, so cpath dir, that way it's defined. And what I want to do is make sure that I change my directory to cpath, because remember that we are using the command line tool here. Let's make sure everything is relative to cpath. Now cpath here is just a directory without a slash at the end. Now the slash depends on the system the person is using, maybe Linux or something. So instead of me just putting a string like a slash like that, because you never know, maybe the system is using the front or backslash, we can't really know. So there's a constant in PHP called directory separator. So you just put it there and it will determine what the directory separator is for the current system that the user is running this on, because the user can be running this on Linux, Mac, or Windows. So we put that there, that's our directory path, then we change our path to that. So maybe, let me put this at the end instead, like so. That way we do that first, and then we grab these guys second. Okay, and then what I want to do now is to create a new Thunder object. So I'm going to do Thunder is equal to new. Now remember that this Thunder thing is in the Thunder namespace. So what I would do is say dash with that slash there, Thunder slash Thunder, like that. So new Thunder, Thunder, because that's the namespace. This is the namespace, this is the class name. So the namespace is that, the class name is here. So since they are all the same, that's why we have that. Okay, so if we don't see any errors here, then everything is going accordingly to plan. So let's test this. Yeah. Now also, this may not work because the Thunder thing is in there. So we have to move from here. We'll move above to the app directory and then inside the Thunder folder. So this is going to be new. Let's put a string there, dot dot. We need a slash here, right? So I'm going to use directory separator here. Let's see. Let's make sure things are working as intended. And then this is going to go to app. Okay. Having to type that is cumbersome. What do I do? Directory separator again. This is insane. And then we put Thunder. Let's see if that's gonna work at all. I'm not sure. Okay, so could not open file MVC. Oh, that's right. We changed the name. So PHP Thunder. Let's just type that. Okay, so syntax error, unexpected single quote string on line 13. So what's that problem? This single quote string there. Okay. What I'm gonna do is this. Let me ignore this stuff for a moment. I'm gonna put this slash here, like so. You know what? Instead of having to type the directory separator like this all the time, what I'm gonna do is make a constant that's shorter. I'm going to define this as ds, and then the value will be the directory separator, like that. That way I can put ds there, like so. Much easier. Okay, so we define that, we define the C path, we change to our C path, and instead of directly doing this, you know what I would do is just remove that, like so. But before I instantiate this, because this is not in the same directory as the Thunder PHP file, so instead I'm going to require an initialization file. So require, then I will do app/thunder/init.php, like so. Now, of course, here we need directory separator instead, so I'm going to do that and replace this with quotes like that, and then ... and then before that ds. That way I join the directory separator between those, whatever the directory separator is at that point. So what I'm doing here is just I want to load a file called init.php, which I'll put inside the thunder.php, the Thunder folder there. So if I clear this and then I say php thunder, okay, so it failed to load that. So let's quickly, now if you look at this, the ds is replaced by the right slashes, like so. Okay, so that's great. So I right click this and say new file. This will be my init.php file, and in here I'm going to save it as init.php, and within this I will require a few files. The first one being the thunder yeah, I think it's capitalized, thunder.php file, like that. So it require that one, which is this. Great. Now I'll require this one last because this is the thing that really we're going to be using, but I'll add other files here because I still want access to some of the core functionality. For example, I will need the config file as well, because when we are doing certain command line tool thingies, we may need to access the database. So we use whatever configuration is put here. That way we don't have to create our own just for the command line tool. That way we can use the same stuff, like let's say create a database, create a new table and stuff like that. Also, the database class, I will need access to this as well. That way I can run queries, because this one has a query function and get row function. So I need those things as well. I also need the functions.php file here, because it also has stuff like it checks for the right extensions if they're there, and also I get to use certain functions in here that I need. So what I will do is move from the Thunder folder, we just move a folder above into the core folder, and then within there, that's where we can get some of this good stuff. So, but before that, what I want is to see if everything is running accordingly to plan. We still get some errors. So let me do CLS and then PHP Thunder, because I want to know what errors we're getting. So require failed to open. So it still can't open the file. Why is that? The init file is right there, init.php, So it's saying it can't open up Thunder init.php, failed to open stream, no such file inside. Really? No such file? Okay, let me go back to thunder.php. So instead of ds, let me try and put just a slash backward like so. Let's see if that works. Let me see. Okay, still failed, so that's not the problem. Okay, so why is it failing? The important thing to look for is, let's see what the current dir is. Let's see, require. I want to echo cpath and see what I get. Okay, so let's try again. PHP Thunder. There we go. Require. Why can't I never see anything? Okay, so it's still complaining. Where is this complaint? On line 14. So the line is here, but why didn't it echo that instead? Let me just put die over here so we don't go any further to avoid the confusion. Oh, okay, so it gives me that up to MVC. So MVC, okay. So that's where the problem is. So the C path is up to MVC. Wait a minute. And it has a slash at the end, which is great. So what I can do instead is use, let's see, require. So the current directory is in here. So what I need to do is, I don't need to put a dot here to go above. We just need app like so. This should do just fine. Okay, so let's try this again. PHP Thunder. Okay, so things have worked as intended now. So we didn't need the dot. So now Thunder is working. So let's make sure that indeed our class is functional. So what I'm going to do is create a few methods. So I'm going to create a public method, but it's called a function, of course. Public function. Now this function, I'm going to call it make, like that. Okay. And then here I just want to echo make function, like that. All right. Now I will put new line there and return, just so when it echoes, it goes to a new line. Okay, very cool indeed. So what I want to do now, once I instantiate this, I want to run the make function. So I'm going to go to Thunder here, and I have made an instance. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to use the function core user func. Now I'm going to use this one that says core user func array. Now what this one does is it just runs a function. Okay. Now you can run a function that's within an object, that's within a class. So here the function, instead of just putting the function name, I'll put an array instead. So the array will contain, first of all, the object that contains the function, and then comma the function name, which is make, like that. And here we have no params to send, so we just send an empty array, just like that. So what I'm doing here, I'm just telling it that please run me a function, and the function is within the Thunder object, and the function is called make. So there it is, there. Now if you want to run a function that's not within a class, just a function, you can just put the function name here as a string. So let's see if things will run as it is right now. So I'm gonna do, and as you can see, we get make function. So this is running from the make function. So I can say this is the make function. So let's redo that so you can see it clearly. This is the make function. Okay, so just like that, we are able now to run an actual class from here, which will be kind of our routing system at this moment. So let's add more functionality to this thing. So to begin with, we're going to create another public function here called help. Now what the help function will do is it's going to simply echo out some help information so that in case the programmer forgets how to use this tool, they can simply type the help function. So let me paste that information there. Alrighty then. So you can copy this information, pause the video and copy that. So this is just text. I'm just lazy at typing, so that's why I just typed it earlier and copy and paste here so I don't even waste your time. Now version here will be the version of our command line tool. So instead of this one, I'm going to do this version like that. And that's because I want to create the version number from here. So I'm going to make a private function, a private variable called version, right? Private version is equal to, and then you type the version number of your command line tool. So mine is still in its infancy, so 0.001 or something. Why have things moved suddenly? What's going on? Right. The tabbing thing is off all of a sudden. Okay, something like that. All right, so these spaces actually matter in the command line. So let's see this in action. So if I call the help function, it should echo this stuff here. So let's see. I'm gonna do PHP Thunder and press enter. Okay, so there it goes directly to the make function, so that's fine. But let's fix things. Let's make sure it goes to the help if we don't type anything. So here, as you can see, it calls a very specific function. Now I wanted to call the help function if the action is empty, okay? So if there's no action specified, so we're gonna say if empty, all right? Action. We do that, and then we will make an else statement, and then move this thing above there. I will duplicate this and move one of these up there. So if the function is empty, if the action is empty, we will call the help instead. But then if it isn't, we will consider the action here that was put and put that as a function to run. Now the thing is, our action sometimes has, let's see here. Let me go to Thunder here. As you can see with this help information we've given, so when we are dealing with a database, we can do something like db create in order to create a new database schema. So these are just commands that you can now give to our tool to do certain things. So we have to make these things work. So here I'm just giving an overview of what we are going to, what the thing can actually do, the command line tool. And we'll make all this actually work one by one. So here, as you can see, with the make function, this action is joined with make and migration there. Okay, so make, migration. So what we should do is the function name will be named make, but the rest of this part is we can put an if statement to choose what to do depending on what the text is on this side, but this can be the function name. So in order to get the function name, because sometimes the function name can be like this, migrate right there, right? So we we're going to just separate this text that we get, because action will be this entire text. So separate it by a full colon, and then we get the first part of the full colon as the actual function. So let's do that here. So if action is empty, that's a no-brainer. It's going to go to the help. But if it isn't, it will try to run that. So let's see what happens when we just type Thunder, PHP Thunder, like that, without an action. Then it shows us the help tool. So as you can see now, it says Thunder version 1.1, command line 2, and then it just shows that information, right? So that you can know how to use it. Okay, so here I want us to be able to use the make function, which is a generator. That's what we are calling it. So let's go ahead and do that. So like I said, action here, let's separate that into parts. So I'm going to say parts is equal to explode. That's what we use in PHP. Explode on the full colon, like that. Now with every explosion, obviously there's going to be at least one value that is returned. So I'm going to grab this, put that there, and part 0. So the first item determines the function we're going to run. Now it's very possible that this function name, whatever it is, like for example, if somebody, instead of typing make, they type something else, then we're going to get an error. So let's see this in action. If, for example, I type PHP Thunder, and then I say make, like this, you see it ran the make function. This is the make function. Simple and straightforward. If I just type PHP Thunder without anything, it shows me the help. That's great. But what about PHP Thunder, and I type something, a function that does not exist? Then we get an error now. It says call user array func argument 1 must be a valid callable function, right? So that makes sense because the function does not exist. So all we need to do is check if it does. Now, it's very difficult to check a function inside a class if it exists, but luckily there is something in PHP to help you do that. You just use the word, the function is callable. So callable tries to call your function. So you can just put a function name here, myfunc, for example, and then you to check if that function is callable and give you a true or false there, like that. So if the function is callable, let's move that over there, like so. If it isn't callable, then we're going to echo something. Echo that command was not recognized. Please type the help command to see all commands. Now this is up to you what error you want to type here. So type whatever error you want here to tell the user what to do. So I'm gonna put that there. Okay, great. Okay, now we need to check using this here. Now the thing is callable will check for an actual function, but if I put an array here, it will check within the object that I tell it. So within the Thunder thingy, I'm gonna put those two like so. So this is the object name, and this is the function I want to see if it's callable. All right, so let's do that, and let's repeat our action. See if we get an error this time. So I'm going to say PHP Thunder and some gibberish, and it will say that command was not recognized. Please type the help command to see all commands possible or something. Or you can say, please type PHP Thunder help, something like, to be very specific, to to get help. I think to see your commands, it's fine. Okay, so that's what it does. Or if you want, you can just immediately just run this right here. So I'm gonna do that. And then instead I'm gonna say, please see below for commands. Like that. I think that's better. So let's repeat this and see what happens. Oops. There we go. That command was not recognized. Please see below for commands. So I'm gonna do this. Remove that there. Okay, there we go. So it now shows you what's possible, which is great. Okay, so let's put a few more functions here inside the Thunder class. So there's the help function, quite alright, the make function, quite alright, but I want two more here. So the first one, I want the db function, the make function, and the migrate function. Okay, so you can put as many as you want. Okay, so I've changed those so we can see exactly which one we've gone into. So let's test this. So if now I go PHP Thunder make, there you go. If now I go PHP Thunder migrate, there you go. If I now go PHP Thunder, oops, what am I clicking? If I go PHP Thunder db, this is the db function. Or if I go PHP Thunder and do db and then full colon and then type something, maybe even create or something like create, it still tells me this is the db function. It recognizes it, just like PHP Thunder make migration. It recognizes that we are targeting the make function. Okay, so this is very good. This is our routing system. At least now we can put specific code for specific things in specific functions. Let's do that. Okay, so to simplify the process of, let's say, making something, let's do here, let's put an if statement, first of all. So what we're going to do is we're going to set, since we already know the action here, we're going to get the next thing. Actually, let's try action again. I'm gonna do action is equal to, so I want to repeat this, grab the argv from there, like so. Now if you're making something, let's look at our help here. When we make something, we either make a model or a migration or a seeder. So those are the three options so far. So what I'm going to do is grab this action part. Actually, what I'll do is, instead of doing all of this, so processing, repeating ourselves, I'm going to say, let's set it as mode here. So what I'll do is go to that Thunder part. And when we go in the make, where is this? This one right here. I want to send the, because here you can send items in an array, right? So this is an array here, which contains the arguments. So the first item in the array will be, let me grab these parts here, will be the second part of this. So paste like that. So the second part is in 1 there. So here when I'm splitting the action, I'm expecting to get at least 2 parts. And that's because when, let's say, we have db and we split it, this whole sentence here, this whole phrase, split it with the full colon, I get this and that, but it's not all the time, because for example this one doesn't have two parts to it, so we have to make provision for that as well. But most of them do, like migrate, rollback, refresh, etc. So what I want to do is go back here. We can assume that a part exists, a second one here exists. And what I'm going to do is, if it doesn't, I'll put 2 question marks like this. If it doesn't, I'll put just an empty string like so. That way we don't get an error if it doesn't exist. But if it does exist, mostly on the make section of things, it does exist. So in that case, there will be either model, migration, or CEDA. So that's what we're expecting. So in this case, I'm going to put just an if statement. Now you can use a switch statement instead. Same thing here. So I'm going to say switch. Let me use switch like this. I want it to type for me. So I'm going to get the mode. Now if we go to default, meaning that none of the above actually worked out. So in this case, we're going to echo and say something make. In this case, we're going to say new line return and say unknown command. Okay. Something like that. So maybe we go in the make and say unknown command. You can put the errors that suit you best. Here, if it's make model, for example. Not only that, we need to make controllers as well. So that's one thing I forgot. Make controller. So let me move migration a bit below. So this one generates a new controller file. Okay, so we have a controller, a model, a migration, a CEDA. So those are the things we have. So let me move here. Let's make sure that is reflected in our switch statement. So I'm going to duplicate a few times. So let's start with controller, model, and then migration, and then a CEDA, like that. Okay, great. So how do we create a controller, you may ask? Now, instead of typing everything, in fact, here, instead of just echoing, we have to die here. So let me put die over there, like so. Okay. Unknown make command. Okay. Let's put this inside some quotes for it to make sense. Good. So with this, if I go ahead and type PHP Thunder make and then some gibberish, it will say unknown make command. But if I type the same thing, instead here I say model. Wait. Oh yeah, it's still unknown because it's model. Now it's known, so it doesn't show an error. So it works fine. So what I want to do is, if I go to controller, inside controllers, I'm going to get a sample controller, which is the home controller. I'll copy all of this and make a file inside the Thunder folder. Now I'm going to make a new folder instead and call it samples. That way we can put multiple files in there, new file, paste, and save. So this one is going to be called the controller-sample.php. Save. Okay, so you see here we have a namespace controller. This is like the what do you call this? The boilerplate or something that you can use to how do you call this? something you use as a sample, right? It's a template. That's the word I was looking for. Template. Yes. So here we're gonna put class name like so. That way we can replace this with an actual class name, because we don't know if the class name will be home or something. Let me paste that. So class name here, class name there. What else can change? The index remains as it is. Now here there's home over here. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put this like so, class name as well, but maybe the smaller version of this. So class name, let's do class name in lowercase here. Okay, so this way it's going to replace this with a lowercase version. That's a capitalized version, uppercase version as well, or proper case there, and then smaller case there. So wherever I put these are placeholders. Okay, great. So let's see how this can work. So this is a controller sample, right? Let's go back to our Thunder thingy here. So here I'm gonna grab my sample first. So I'm gonna say sample file is equal to. So at this point I want to go from the current directory, like the way I required this, right? So let me grab that from the base directory. I'm gonna do this, but here we use file get contents. Like that, file get contents. But the file I want to get is the controller dash sample, and this is going to be inside Thunder, but within samples, and then DS, like that. Okay, so if there's going to be an error, we will see it when it tries to get the file. So let's try this. PHP Thunder make controller. Okay, so apparently no errors, so that's great. So we have our sample file. So all we need to do now is replace things. Now we have the mode here, okay, quite right, but we also need a class name. So the class name is going to be equal to, we're going to use argv again. Now this time we're grabbing the argv from 2, like that, and if it doesn't exist, let's put an empty there. Okay, now we're going to ask the question, if empty argv or class name, the class name is empty, then let's die over here with an error. So let's say, please provide a controller name. Okay, so if the class name does not exist, please provide it. Okay, and then if it does exist, then now we can do some stuff. We can say sample file is equal to, or sample content maybe. We can say, what can we use? Preg replace or preg match? Let me use preg replace, because then I can use a regular expression. So here I'm looking for a pattern. The pattern I'm looking for is this. Now I want these brackets to be treated as regular strings, so I'm going to slash them like that. So class name replace with the class name. Okay. Now this one I want it to be capitalized, so say UC UC first. That's how you capitalize the first letter, like that, and then the subject is the sample file, like so. Okay, and then once I'm done with that, I can create a file and say file put contents. Now we need a file name and the data. The data is inside sample file there, like so. Also, let me replace this small version here. Let's see, class name. Why is this one showing a weird thingy? We'll see. So instead of UC first, this one is string to lower, a lowercase version of class name. There we go. Okay. Now preg replace, is there wait, oh yeah, no, this will work just fine, I guess. Now the file name, we need to know where to put this file. So the file should go inside controllers, right? So let's create a file name here. We create a file name from the class name. So we're going to say file name is equal to UC first class name. There we go. And then we concatenate .php at the end, like that. Okay. So we have to check if the file exists. And then if it does, we die again. Say that controller already exists. So let's put that there and say that controller already exists. Yes. So file name. Now the file name, currently we're in this main folder. We have to go inside app controllers, right? So keep that in mind. And we can do that by, where did I get the sample file get contents? So I want to grab this right there up to this point. Actually, that was too far. So what I'm going to do is come to file name is equal to, I will paste this there like so. So inside app, instead of Thunder, is controllers. Okay, and then the directory separator, the file name, like so. Okay. Great. So let's see if this is gonna work as intended. Okay. So I'm gonna try again. Say, make controller. Please provide a controller name. Okay, great. Now the controller name will be student. Please provide a controller name. Really? But I just did. Okay, let's go back and see if it didn't create that controller. File exists, file name, that controller, please provide a class name arg2. Okay, what I'm gonna do here is just do a print r to see where we are of argv. Let's see what happens there. Okay, so argv is not defined. Oh, because this is inside the class. Okay, great. Interesting. Okay, so what we're going to do is to actually get to get things from here, we should just pass in the argv from there directly, right? So we're going to say argv instead, right? And then here I will decode everything I need. So let's pass in the argv here instead. So instead of all these things here, I will pass in argv. All right, that's much better. So since we have argv there, we can try this. Class name is argv tool, that's fine. And then the mode, we need to know the mode here. So mode is equal to argv1. Let's do that as well, something like this. Okay, but then let's change mode again, the same way we did here, where we exploded it into parts like that. Okay, but I think we can leave it. We don't need to do that. We can say, let me just leave mode as it is here, as it comes in. Then what I would do is mode, instead of just controller, we can do make controller like this. And then just put make on these things. That way I don't need to remove it. All right, so that works out after all. All right, so let's see how that works. Unknown command make. Really? Where does that happen? Unknown command make. Okay. Mode is equal to, oh sorry, this should be 1 there. Sorry, my bad. So I'm gonna copy this, clear the screen, paste it, and try again. Why? Okay, let me try again. Print r argv. Let's see what happens there. Okay, so argv is just saying thunder. Oh, right. I see what's happening here. Okay, so when you put an array there, it has to separate those into smaller pieces, so which is good for us. So this one is the first one is called the file. The second one will be the mode. The third one will be the name. So let me just put empties there or null, just in case they don't exist. I forgot that if you supply an array here like we've done argv, it won't reach this side as a single array. That array will be exploded or extracted into separate actual entities, one by one. So I have to grab them like this. So class name here will be equal to name, and this one will be equal to mode. So we don't even need to do this here because mode already exists from there. Okay, I won't call it class name because we're not just making classes. Actually, we are making classes, so I'm going to call it class name. So then I don't need to put this there. Okay, that is great. Let's try this out again. Okay, so as you can see, it didn't show anything here, which means no errors, which means it did create. And look at that, it created a file called student. And if we look inside the file, it says student class student, and then here it expects a view called student. Very good. So we have successfully made a tool that actually creates a controller. So let me delete that file from there first. So once we put the file contents there, we can say if file put contents, which means it worked out. We can put an echo there, or else put another echo there. So at this point everything is done, so we just need to die with a message and say controller created successfully. Okay. Here we can say controller failed to create controller due to an error, or something like that. Okay, so let's try again. We want to create the student controller. Controller created successfully. Very good. So if we check, it's here again. Very nice. So if you want to change what is created here, you just go to the sample here, the samples, and you can make adjustments to it. Maybe you wanted to add, for example, a database name, database file, or something. I don't know. You can change the namespace and stuff. That's up to you. And that sample is being copied here with replaced names. So if, for example, I want to create another controller called make controller, I want to create another one called about. Maybe it's the about page. Oh, my bad. I typed something. I put a star at the beginning. Could not open input file, make controller. Wait. Ah, right. The problem is I forgot the word thunder there. So very easy to forget. I don't have to capitalize the about word. Okay, so there we go. Now we will find there's an about controller there. Everything's set properly. So let's delete these two since they are samples, and let's continue our work. Alright, now there will be times when a user types some strange characters in the class name. Okay, so in that case we need to clean it up. So we can do that using a preg replace. So we're gonna say something like class name is equal to, and then we do preg replace. Now the reason we're using preg replace is so we can use a regular expression, and I want to have I want to put what I need in here. So like A to Z characters, capital A to capital Z characters are acceptable, and underscore is acceptable as well. What else? Anything that isn't that should be replaced, because even a dash, for example, should be replaced. So if somebody wants to put a space, they will use an underscore instead. But this dash here, something like this, is unacceptable. So since here I'm putting the character sequences that I want, also 0 to 9 should be acceptable, I guess. But a class name should not accept a class name that's at the if the number is at the beginning. So we'll be checking for that as well. So here what I'm going to do is say, so I've put all the sequences I need in here, right? And put a plus there. So any number of characters of this type is acceptable. But if I put a caret inside here, I'm saying anything that isn't this should be replaced. Now what are we replacing it with? An empty string. So we replace that and paste there like so. Also, if we find that, let's use preg match here. If we find that the user has started the class name with a number, then that's a problem. So how do we know that? We can put a caret here but we put that on the outside and then put a character sequence of 0 to 9. So for as long as the first character here is a number of any length, right, 1 or more, then we have a problem. So we're going to tell the user that class names cannot start with numbers. So here we die with class names can't start with a number. Okay, so you can number or symbol. So in fact, what we can do is we'll check at the beginning if it starts with, actually we should whitelist here instead of doing this, right? I think I can grab this thing here. Wait a minute. It can start with an underscore, right? I think that's acceptable. If I do 0 to 9 is not acceptable, underscore is fine. So if it this at the beginning it's not any of these, then class names can start with a number or symbol. Let's see if that works. So I'm gonna copy this and then clear the screen and try this again. Oh, sorry about that. Everything was normal there, so I'm going to delete it one more time. But this time I will paste and then I will start this with a few numbers. So class names can start with this number or symbol. Okay, that's great. How about if I put % anything and then the controller was created successfully. Okay, so I think I know why this worked out. It just removed the symbols. That's because we do remove the symbols here, and then that's when we check if it starts with a number. So then I guess it's irrelevant to put symbol, we just say can't start with a number there. Okay. So here let's put some comments. Comments are important. So let's say clean class name. Okay, so put some comments where necessary. Check if class name is empty. So go ahead and put comments everywhere so that you remember what you're doing there. Check if class name okay, so this part here anyway, I won't put these. I don't want you to watch me just make comments there. You can make your own comments that make sense to you. That's much better. So otherwise, this is exactly how we create our controller. So the only thing that remains now is to create a that's controller. We can create a model in exactly the same way. So I'm just going to grab these guys here and paste there instead, right? So right again, sample file here instead of controller, this is going to be model sample. And in the same way, we'll do this. Now we don't have this part here, so I'm gonna find something else to replace. And since this is not a controller, but a model, we'll change these. Oops, what's happening? I want this text here. Model created successfully. Model. Yeah, I think that works. Model sample, class name, class name. So instead of this here, I'm going to replace table. Okay, so let me replace table with the class name with an S at the end. So just here string to lower, but let me do dot and then put an S at the end like that. That way if the model is user, then the table is going to be users like that. Now you can do a check to see if there's already an S there. That's entirely up to you if you want to do that. Maybe we can do that. Let's do that. If there's no S yet, we can do this and say if preg match. So we find a pattern there. Now the pattern is for the end. So the end, I just want to find the letter S. Let me put a $sign for the end there. So if the, what's this? The class name ends with an S at the end here. So if preg match class name S, so let me put if not preg match. That's the only time we should add an S. So we say only add an S at the end of table name if it doesn't exist. So we're gonna check for table and replace that. And then file name, sample file, successful. Okay, so now we just need the sample. So I'm gonna go to the user.php file, copy all of that. Oops. Select all, copy. And let's go to samples here, new, save, and this one is going to be the model-sample.php. Okay, so in this one we don't need this function, the login function. We also don't need the signup function because most of the models will not have this one. We have the validation rules, that's fine. Everything else is okay. Here we'll put table. Oh no, actually it's class name. All right. And what else? There's table here. Instead of this, we're gonna have table like that. Okay. And primary key usually will be the ID. Login, unique, yeah, these you can edit after creating it. So this is all fine here. That's great. That's great. I think that works just fine. So you can change these samples anytime to get a different kind. Oops, what was I doing? Clear the screen. So let's go PHP Thunder make model. If I do that, please provide a, oh, that's one thing I forgot. So this depends on, please provide a controller name, right? So let's grab this and move it lower. So I'm gonna go down here. Oh no, we do need to check for the class name. Please provide a class name. I think I'll leave that like so. Because it's not always a controller, right? It should say please provide a class name. So let's do that again. Make model, and this one is the student model. Model created successfully. Oh wait, I think it went to the wrong place. This one was a controller that we created. Let me delete that. The student one, let me delete that as well. So I forgot one thing where we are putting the model class. This one should go inside models. Okay, so the file name is here, it's inside controllers, right? So I better grab this and move it within here, right? So that it's in there, because this is very specific to a controller. So then I'm gonna copy that, paste it here. Okay, so instead of controllers, this one goes to models. Yep, that model already exists. Good. So let's try again. So the model was created successfully. If we check inside models, we see the student model right there. As you can see here, it shows the table name as well, but the problem is it's not within quotes. So that's a problem I have created there, which I need to fix. So let me close that. In fact, let me just delete it. Let's go to the model sample, and right there, let's put this within quotes. Let's try again. So if I come back now, I have a student model. And you see here the model is student, singular, but the table is students, which makes sense. So this is just to help you get started with creating a model and stuff. So let's delete that. All right, this is going great. Now the issue is with migrations and seeders, we don't already have the functionality for that. So we're going to ignore these for now. The only thing we need to do is the migration. Oh wait, we don't have that either. So what we need is the DB part here. So once we finish that, then our tool is complete. Now, of course, these are not the only functionality you can add to the tool. You can make it do all kinds of things, because this is just PHP, which you can do file manipulation, you can move things around, create templates and all that. So it's up to you to be creative on what you want your tool to be able to do, right? This is just scratching the surface. But let's complete our DB thing here, and then we can call it a day. All right, so as we move on to the DB portion of things, I want to change something here. So this thing here is unusable. We don't need this, but we are forced to do things like this because of how we added this argv there. So instead of adding an array directly like that, I'm going to add the array within an array, so that I add the array itself as the first item of the array. So I'm just going to put brackets around it like so. And just like that, we can change things over here. So instead of doing this, I can copy these guys and put them down here instead, like so. So instead I can say mode is equal to, and do this. And I'm gonna do argv like that. And then do, since this is 0, 1, 2, so I'm gonna start with 1, and class name will be 2. And then we can eliminate this part right there, like so. So instead of all this, I'm just gonna bring this as argv like that. Okay, so let me put my semicolon there and do this. Let me tab those into perfection like that. So here I'm gonna put 2 question marks to say if it does not exist, set it as a no empty value. Okay, I think things will still work like this. Let me go to models here, and let me try to create a model just for testing. Make model student. Okay, so everything seems to have worked correctly because we have our student model right there. Okay, so delete that file. Now let's go ahead and create something. Let's go to this other function over here. Now the DB function has similar characteristics here, so I'm just going to copy everything that's in here and paste it in the other function. So I'm going to copy that. Let's go to this position here. Instead of this is the DB function. What am I doing? Okay, so then I paste in there like so. Alright, so now we can change things. So first of all, there's the mode, which is fine. So the mode is make something as well. Let's go and see what we have here. So it's not actually make, it's DB. So we're not going to do the seed, we're not going to do the we will do this table. So we want the create and the drop, right? Migrations, we don't have that yet, so we're going to ignore these. So for now, the ones that I'll make are DB table, DB drop, and DB create. So table, drop, create. Let's see how we can work with those. So instead of class name here, because that's the second param that we need, let's say DB create, and then we have param 1, or what can we call it? We can call it name, DB seed, maybe table name. So create, this could be a database name, DB name, and table. Okay, so instead of class name, I'm just going to change it to name, or you can change it to param 1, just so it's universal, right? Let's change that. So I'm just pressing Ctrl D to select all instances of this and change it to param 1. Okay, so that's great. Param 1 is there. Let's move that a bit back. Okay, and of course I need argv over here. Okay, so check if param 1 is empty. Now this depends. Please provide a, let's try with DB name. So instead of all this, what I'm going to do, because these are very different things, so what I'm going to do is this we don't need to check for a number and stuff. Let me remove that. We don't need to clean anything here though. Though this may be necessary because we don't want somebody using symbols to create a database name, but who knows. So let's just leave creative ideas to the creator. So I'm going to remove that, but I will move this inside there like so. Okay, then in case of make here, I will change this to DB full colon. So there's DB seed, there's also DB migrate that we will use in future. No, actually there's nothing like that. There's seed, there's create, there's drop. Okay, so seed there, drop, and then there's create somewhere. Wait, am I editing the wrong? Yeah, I'm editing the wrong place. So let me undo that. Let me go back to here. So seed, there's drop there, like so. There's DB table, and then there's db create, right? So there we go, create. Okay, so we're going to start with this one. So to please provide a db name. Okay, that's fine. Maybe let's put that database name. Okay, so we want to create a database here. So in this particular case, we don't need to grab any files or check if any files exist or replace any stuff. All we do need to do is create a, let's see, controller created successfully, or we can say database created successfully. Let me remove this. I think we can't really know if it was created or not, and so I'm just gonna remove all of this and just leave the message as it is right there, like so. Okay, that should do. So what I want here is just to create a db class and say is equal to new core database, like that. Okay, so once we create db, we're gonna do db query and then run a query in here. Now we currently don't have a db class. Now we don't want to create a new db class. We want to grab the one that's inside core right there. Now this also depends on the configuration, right? Because it needs to connect to the database using these things that are inside the configuration. So we need to add config and database, and let's see if we are using any functions in here that are outside, and we're not, so this is fine. Now the problem is we also need root path so that we can use these guys. Otherwise this is gonna say undefined blah blah blah. So instead, where we are putting cpath here, let's also put root path. Just so we should have just named it root path. Actually, there's no reason to name it cpath, but hey, this is fine. Maybe we can avoid confusion, I guess, because there is a path inside the config here which is created, I think. Yeah, root path is actually created inside config. Okay, so there's no need to actually make that, so that's okay. I'll remove that. So now I just need to import the config and the database. I will do that in the init file of the thunder.php. So do that before the thunder PHP itself. Now these guys are not in here like the thunder.php file. They're outside this folder into the core. So we have to go into the app app slash. Now we do have ds, so I will use ds there. And then let's see here. So there's that ds, which is the directory separator. So we go up. Actually, we don't go to app. We are inside this thunder. So we go up outside to core. So let's go core and then separator and then the actual file. So in there we have the config.php. I'll duplicate that and just change that to the database. I don't know why I capitalized this, so because it's a model. Then let's remove this. Okay. Now I think it's better to say require once. That way, if it's encountered again, it will be ignored. Okay, so there we go. Now let's give it a test run, shall we? So if I go to thunder.php, where we do create db, I don't want any of this code to run, so I'm just gonna do return like that. In fact, I'll put the return. Let me leave it for now. Let me assume it's actually working. So we're gonna create a query here. In the query, I'm going to say, to create a database is simple. You say create database if not exists, and then the database will be, we need the database name, which is inside param1 in this case. Okay, and once you run that, that's it. Database created successfully. So there we go. Actually, that's great. To drop a database is just as simple. I'm going to copy this here, and let's come down here to drop a database, paste. So instead of create, we say drop a database and then the database name. All right, so that's great. Unknown. Now on this command here, I think I better put the argv 1 like that, which is the command. That's the action, right? That's the mode. Great. So in fact, let me move this and say unknown command, and then we put the command there. Let me remove that, so I can remove the, copy this, put it on the other function as well. I think it's a better explanation. Okay. Alrighty then, so we can drop a database deleted successfully. Okay, drop database, blah blah blah. Now if you want to see what's inside the table, it's equally the same thing, right? So table, I'm gonna grab this, paste it here. So there we go. Now here we need a database name, and actually, do we need it? Yes, we do need a, no we don't. So please provide a table name. Here we change that param to table because we want to see what's inside that table. So table is for, to see the, how a table is designed. So here we use the query describe, and then we describe the table name here. And then instead of all of this, we just put die down here, but we are going to do print readable, and that will be the result. I'm going to call it res like so. So res will be here, is equal to the result of that query, and then we'll put it here. Now the result of this query will be an array within an array, so I'm going to say something like if res, then let's do that. Now you can design the echo in a much neater way that you want. Otherwise, let's die with, let me just echo. Here we're gonna say could not find table data or something. Yeah. Or could not find data for table, and then the table name in this case, which is param1. I'm gonna just put that there. Okay, great, that is good. So let's give it a shot and see what happens. So here I'm gonna say PHP Thunder DB create. Now I want to create a database called, let's try testing 1 2 like that. Okay, So we have a few warnings here. First one being failed to open stream, no such file directory exists. Okay, so this one core config.db does not exist. So I think it's getting the, where is this? Inside the init. This is based on the app. Actually, we should do app like this .ds, like I did in the other section, and then core, and then that. I think this will work. So let's CLS to try again. PHP thunder db. Okay, so it says access denied. Why? Where is this access denied coming from? So I guess it's in the database thingy here. Okay. So why is that? When I include this, I'm including this init from there. So I start with the config. The config does define root path. Oh, it actually just checks to see if the root path is defined. Okay, so that's the issue. So which means I do need to define it here after all. So I'm just going to make a definition there. Let's try again. Okay, so undefined array server name on line 5 inside config.php. Okay, so the reason this is a problem, if we go to the config file, it doesn't know what server name is because we are not using a server. In this case, we're using the command line. So we have to change this if statement here. So what I'm going to do is put an if statement and say, I know we have to use our local host configuration, not the online version. So what I'm going to do is say if not empty here, server name like that, and so if this is not empty and that is true at the same time, then we are onto something. But let me put brackets around this as well. Let me put another or statement. So I'm going to say if empty. So if the server name is empty from there, like so, right? And then we're going to say and PHP, the API name is equal to command line interface, or. So this is one part. If this is true, let me put that in a bracket. So if this section is true or this section is true, then we go through with this. I think that will solve our problem. So let's try that again. Syntax error, unexpected token if on line 5. Okay, so I've missed something. Saying unexpected. Oh, there's an if statement here which I shouldn't put, right? This goes up to where exactly? Let me move this like so. I don't need that. Okay, great. Let's give it another test and see what's going on. So it's working now. So PHP thunder db create. So now it says please provide a database name. So if I redo this and just say testing 1 2. Okay, so there's a fatal error. Could not, core database could not be found. Okay, that class was not found. Let's see what. Oh, it's inside model. Okay, so that's why it wasn't found. So what I'm gonna do is go back to thunder.php, change that to model. Okay, so now that we've changed that, let's give it a shot. Okay, so there we go. Okay, so more errors. Cannot instantiate trait db. Oh, okay, so that's a problem. Ooh, that's something I didn't consider. Interesting. Okay, so what we're gonna do is, because database is actually a trait, right? It's not really a class, so we can't instantiate. I don't even know why I used it as a trait. There must have been a reason. So I'll leave it there instead of modifying that. Let's try instead and instantiate model.php. Oh, that's a trait as well. Looky there. Interesting. Okay, so no problem. A trait we can use like we do here. So all we have to do is create our own database, DB database thingy here. So I'm going to go to Thunder, right click, new file. I'm going to call this one database.php as well. Save that. Now I could call this one DB just for a different name, but let's leave it like that. So since the other thing is a trait, we can, let me just copy the top part here. Okay, so the namespace is Thunder for this one, I guess. Maybe, I don't know if that's important, but let's leave it be. This is not the Thunder class. This is the database class, the version for Thunder. So let's close that. Now, what I want to do here is use a trait called database. Now, that trait is inside the model namespace, like that. Okay. And just by doing this, I have imported whatever is in the other database class in here, since it's a trait. So everything in here is automatically imported into this other one because I'm using it. So now we can instantiate a version of database that's in the Thunder namespace there. So let's try that. Let's go back to Thunder. So namespace here is Thunder, so that's fine, which means we don't really need to specify the namespace. So if we remove that namespace specification and just say new database, it should work. Now database, this one is a class, unlike this other database in here, which is a trait. So difference there. A trait is meant just for importing, while a class is for instantiating. So let's do PHP Thunder. Let's see any errors we get this time. DB create testing 1 2. More errors. So class Thunder database not found. Okay, that's because it's not imported. So let's go in the init here, and right after this one, I want to import database.php. This one is in the same folder as thunder.php, unlike this one here. So that is okay. Let's try again. Look at that. Database created successfully. So let's see if your database was created successfully. So I'm gonna refresh my PHP admin. Let's see if there's a database named testing 1 2. Apparently not, is it? Apparently not. So database failed to create. So why did it fail? Interesting. This is strange. So there is no database here. Okay, so something didn't go as planned. We did run the query function here. So new database, query create database if not exists, param 1. Okay, what I want to do is say echo my query. I want to see what's wrong, if anything. Okay, so let's try this again. Create database if not exists, testing 1, 2. So this should be a valid query. So if I copy that and go to my php.admin, regardless where I am, and type that, I can hit go like this and actually have a database named testing 1, 2. Okay. But if I go on databases, I can delete the testing 1, 2. So select it and drop it. All right. Great. So our query is fine. So what exactly is wrong? It should have worked. DB query. Okay. This is weird. Let me try again. Okay, so it says it was created. So let me remove the if not exists. I want to get an error if it already exists. So let me do this. Okay. Can't create database already exists. So it's actually working. This is great. Let me see. I just couldn't see the database, right? Maybe because it wasn't created from here. Let me refresh the page. There it is. Okay, so it's working. Now let's try and drop a database, right? So let's go over here and say PHP Thunder. Why does it overshoot every time? PHP Thunder DB drop testing 1, 2. Okay. So what happened here? Database not found. Class core database not found. Why is this an issue? Aren't we over this already? Okay, line 59. Where are we? 59. Oh, right. It's because of this part here. So let me remove that core. And it should work this time. Okay. So let's redo what we did and go. Database deleted successfully. Okay, good. Let's make sure it's disappeared. Let me refresh the page. It's right there. And right now, it's no longer there. Okay, great. So it's working. How about displaying date table information, right? Now, the problem is we can't make tables here because we don't have a... We can't make tables because we don't have... We can't show tables because we don't have tables and we haven't made a database yet. Let's actually just create a database. I'm going to do PHP Thunder DB create and then testing 1, 2. Okay, so that was created. What I want to do now is find that database. So there it is, and I want to make a table. So let's do create table users. So this is just for testing. Now to create a table you need to add columns. So I'm going to do ID, which is an int. I won't put any let me try primary key, then comma name, which is a varchar 10 columns long, and then just close that. Okay, so if I hit go, this should create a table, and it has, which is users there. So the only reason I'm doing this is so I can run my command PHP Thunder DB table and then show the table name, which is users. So as you can see now, it has shown the information from that table. So if I scroll up, you will see it's an array. It tells me there's a field called ID. It's of type int, and it gives me all the params. It's got auto increment on that. There's a field username, type varchar, and it shows me all the details that I need about this table. Now this table actually is being taken from the config. You see the config here has a my MVC or MVC DB here. So to change the database that you are referencing, you have to change it from here, because remember that it's using this configuration right here to do things over there. So it assumes this is your database here. So once you create a database, you have to edit your config here to match the database you want to check the tables for. But if you want, you can make it in such a way that on the Thunder PHP, you can provide a database and a table name at the same time. So that's entirely up to you. You can code for that, since you've already seen how to code for these things like this. All right, so this is how we create a command line tool, or how you can use PHP without a server or a browser to make applications that run in the command line like this. All right, so hopefully you have learned something new, at least in this tutorial. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments and I will get to them, of course. Wait a second, I'm seeing something in here. What's that? Let me open that folder. I'm not even sure what all this is, but these are weird files being created. Login unique column. I don't even know what these are. Let me delete them and let me run something and make sure that they don't show up again. Maybe there's something weird. Okay, I think maybe when testing we were doing some crazy stuff. Some things were being created. All right, so finally we have our thunder.php there. You can separate those for clarity so it looks better. What else can we do? All right, I think this is all. On the Thunder class config, I'm just checking to see that I haven't forgotten anything. Of course, since we are importing the config here, even this debug mode works as well in the command line tool. Alright guys, so this is the end of this update. So hopefully we can make another update soon. Most of the time when I make an update, then we can test it in a new project and see what problems we get, and then we can fix those problems. Now before I go, actually I want to fix something here. Let's go to the app application here, and there's that part model.php. Let's go down here where there's validation, right? So we grab the validation rules here. This validation rules, if not empty, right? Now we need two set of validation rules. The validation rules for insert and for update. So instead of using these validation rules, what I'm going to do is this. I'm going to say validation rules is equal to this validation rules, like that. Okay, that's great. And then I can replace every reference of this one to this. So let me copy that. I want to replace all of this. So this is all there is, which is nice. So then I can just remove the this. Oops, my mouse is moving around. can just remove this from there, and there we go. Okay, now the reason I've done this is so I can change where I get the information to put here. So right now I'm getting it from validation rules, but if you remember, we have a primary key here in model. Where is that? So we're gonna say if not empty, this primary key, okay, and not empty. Inside data here, if the primary key exists, so I'm gonna grab this primary key here, put it there. So if that is not empty, which means the primary key source is not empty, and also there is a primary key as part of the data, then we have changed this to an edit now. So what I'm gonna do is put an else statement here, move this there, like so. So what I'm gonna do is say if this is not empty and there's a primary key there, then we got to have validation rules. I don't know how to change this name. I think we can call it on update, like that. On update, validation rules, and then these ones will be on insert validation rules, on insert and on update. So the reason I'm doing this is because I want two sets of validation rules, one when we are inserting and one when we are updating. So once I've done this, what I can do now is go to the user model here. This is the base user model, and it has these validation rules, right? So I can duplicate this right there. I don't need this part there. So then I can do on update, capital V there, validation rules. That way we can set separate rules when we're inserting and when we're updating. So I can see my scroll bar here. Then there's this one here, on insert validation rules. Okay, that's great. That is great. So with that, we have two sets of validation. So we're going to test this in a real project and see if there are any problems, then we can fix it from there. But otherwise, this is it. Now, the final thing I want to do is, in our previous project, we had to change our pager class to include some styles, right? Oh, we did. Wait a minute. Did I change that, really? Oh yeah, it looks like I already changed that. List styles. I think I had to add a few extra things here. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna copy that stuff. You'll have to bear with me here. You just have to copy it from my own project. So let me go to where I created that, That was inside a podcast project. So I'm going to go inside app, core, actually no, in the models section and pager. So I will load this one. Yeah, so it has extra stuff here. So for you that are typing along, you can look at this, pause the video, and type this part here. Instead, what I'll do is I'll copy this into my pager class there and replace these guys. So this is much longer, contains more information. And then go back to the other pager that we did in that project, and I want to copy this display function. Now of course you can pause the video here. I will scroll all the way to the end there so that you can pause the video and retype the information you see. In case you don't have access to the files here for some reason, you can do that. So otherwise I want to copy my display function from there as well. Go down to my own page here and paste it here. Okay, so a few changes there, I guess, and that fixes all our problems. Okay, so that's it for this particular update. We've updated everything we wanted. We have a new command line tool, which is awesome. Now we can speed our process of creating websites even more. Alright guys, so hopefully you've learned something, and I'll see you in the next update.